all. Bills can win it here. White puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. They win it 41-38. Incredible. What a comeback by the Bills.
Jacksonville's perfect record on the line right here.
They put in Williams as the fullback, and he scores a touchdown, the 12th year defensive tackle.
And the fans are all over the field. Incredible. This place is pandemonium.
Welcome to another episode of Disguise Coverage, part of the Cover One Sports Network. I am Anthony. I am the host of Disguise Coverage. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores, ANT. Give me a follow on Twitter and or the deed to your house, bags of gold, or signing a blood oath pledging your undying fidelity to me. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguise Coverage on whatever platform you are viewing or listening to this podcast on, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Facebook. I appreciate every single one of them. While you're there, check out all the content that is part of the Cover One Sports Network. We are the best people breaking down and covering the Buffalo Bills, giving you content week after week, day after day, all that fun stuff. This episode is titled Winning and Sustainability. What I really wanted to do this episode on was the fact that the Bills are 3-0 since I've been wearing glasses in these podcast episodes, knock on wood. I don't want to jinx it, but I mentioned it last week. I put the glasses on for the episodes after the Chiefs game. We beat the Jets. I kept them on that next week. We beat the Pats. I kept them on last week. We beat the Seahawks. I'm not looking for any type of praise or credit or critical acclaim for that. But I think the fact that I've been wearing glasses every week is the reason that the Bills have turned things around and have won their last 3 games these past 3 weeks. So again, I mean, am I a hero? Some people might say that, but I don't want to toot my own horn. But I'm wearing glasses again, knock on wood, or knock on this table, whatever it's made of. I think it's plastic. Hopefully that streak continues this week. Hopefully the Bills get another win. And in this episode, winning and sustainability, the topic of winning and sustainability and the idea for this episode came to me a little bit in between the Pats and the Seahawks game. We saw the Bills come off of 2 difficult losses to the Tennessee Titans and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Titans and the Chiefs are both viewed as teams that we wanted to see what the Bills looked like going up against. They were both measuring stick kind of games. How would we hold up against the 2 finalists in the AFC last year? Both teams were playing good. How would the Bills measure up against teams that other fans or pundits or analysts thought were good teams? The Bills had come off of wins against Miami and the Jets and the Raiders, but nobody was viewing those games as like, oh boy, great wins. So we wanted to see what the Bills looked like against Tennessee and Kansas City. And the Bills lost both of those games, and they didn't look good in those games. I think the loss was a bit overblown in some areas, but the Bills, for all intents and purposes, they didn't look good. It wasn't what we wanted to see. Shout out to Vito, wear glasses, kick asses. I like that a lot. That's fantastic. I appreciate you, and I might start using that in some form or fashion. You're awesome, Vito. You just became the star of the show. I greatly appreciate you. So the Bills didn't look good coming off of the Chiefs game and the Titans game. And then we came into that Jets game, and the Bills won 18-10. And the talk after that game was, yeah, they won, but it was only 18-10. They didn't look great. They didn't succeed in the red zone. The defense got victimized a bit here and there in the first half. They gave up some big runs. And then the Pats game came, and the Pats came limping into that game, very wounded, both in terms of on-field availability, in terms of injuries and depth charts and COVID things and all these type of roster things, but also just in terms of playing and execution. They got smacked by the Niners right before the Bills. And so the thought was, okay, the Bills come into this game, kill the Pats, let's boost that confidence back up, and the Bills didn't kill the Pats. It was a very close game, and the Bills won that game on basically the last play of the game when Zimmer forced that fumble on Cam Newton. So we came out of that game, and there was a lot of talk on social media amongst all the people who I follow and engage with, and even some talk in my own personal real life with friends and family of, man, like those wins were just uninspiring. They didn't look good, and there was worry. Then the Bills beat the Seahawks this past week. Seahawks, a legitimate Super Bowl contender. They were the top seed in the NFC going into that game at 6-1. Russell Wilson, not only an MVP candidate, but I would say MVP favorite by far. And the Bills came into that game, and they held their own, and the offense went blow for blow with Seattle. They put up 44 points. I think the defense played very good. We saw a final score of 34-44 in favor of the Bills. But that one touchdown was garbage time for the Seahawks, and the other touchdown, that touchdown to Moore, was pure blown coverage. Not that those don't count, but for all intents and purposes, the Bills' defense played really good. They got after Russ. They hit him a lot. They got sacks. They got takeaways. They weren't fluky takeaways. They were the result of good scheme, good execution, good effort, both in terms of the coaching staff and the players on the field. And now that thought of who the Bills can be this year has started to turn a little bit. The last couple of episodes we've done here on Disguise Coverage have talked about what the Buffalo Bills' identity is for 2020 and how the Pats game and the Seahawks game, the Cardinals, the Chargers, the Steelers, how those games would define who the Buffalo Bills could be. Good point, Travis. They didn't go blow for blow. They bullied Seattle. You could say that. They passed all over them. They did whatever they wanted. And the Lone Wolf's point here, we were missing a lot of pieces in that Titans game, but I do hate making excuses. Granted, the Bills have been missing pieces for a decent amount of year. They've had injuries. Milano, I don't care that it's even just one guy. He is the second most important person on that defense. Tre'Davious White has been banged up. Him missing in that Titans game was a very big factor. There have been a lot of factors for the Bills. But in all the talk, everything that it comes to, when it comes to talking about wins and it talks about, how they won this game or how they won that game, that's where it led me to this thought of winning and sustainability. And in getting into that, be prepared for me to use the word sustainability a lot in this episode. If you were playing like Disguise Coverage Bingo, that would be a big square. Also words like qualitative or qualitatively or quantitative or quantitatively, all those kinds of things. Lone Wolf, do the Bills have an identity yet? Yes, and we're going to get into that. So be prepared for me to use those words, Disguise Coverage Bingo. Those are the big ones for this episode. But there's a difference between winning and sustainability. You can win games, but not win them in a sustainable fashion. There is a big difference. And in looking at the Bills right now, I think what we all want from a fan base perspective, going into this year was no longer an acceptable year for the Bills to just win games. I think as a fan base and as a team, the bar has been set higher. The expectation level has been set higher. This team is no longer we're just happy to be here kind of team. This is not the playoff game against the Jaguars where it was like, well, if we win, cool, but hey, man, we broke the drought. We're in the playoffs. This is fun. Let's see what happens. Even last year, I think there was a decent amount of people. I know majority of people were heartbroken that we lost to the Texans and we should have beat them. We should have been a Final Four team in the AFC. But there was a decent contingent of fans and people who were like, well, it was still only Allen's second year. Let's see what he does going into next year. Let's see what 2020 looks like. How do we build? How do we go from there? That doesn't exist anymore. The expectation this year, I think for mostly everyone, and I say mostly, I say like 95% and up, the expectation was win the AFC East and get at least one playoff victory. And I still think there would be probably about 60 to 70% of fans that would expect a conference championship appearance going into this year. And then especially with the way the Bills started out. And that's where the winning factor and the sustainability factor comes in, because it's no longer just about winning. It's about sustainability. The Bills winning games and how they look in those games, because we want to project how they're going to look for the rest of the year. We want to project what they're going to look like in the playoffs against top-tier teams in the AFC and potentially in the NFC if the Bills somehow make a Super Bowl. It's all about that sustainability factor and being able to continue to win. Winning in and of itself at the basic level is equal in all terms, quantitatively, in terms of if you win a game 28-27 versus winning that same game 28-0, it doesn't matter in the win column. Either way, you get a win. It is the exact same thing. It's quantifiably equal. A win is a win. Game one of the season, you win 28-27, cool, you're 1-0. If you win that game 28-0, cool, you're 1-0. If you win it by running the ball, you're 1-0. Passing, 1-0. You get my point. It's the same quantifiably. But where the wins differ is in terms of their qualitative value, the quality of a win. For example, a win this year versus the Chiefs in the 2020 NFL season has much more quality and much more qualitative value to it than a win versus the Jets. And that's because the Chiefs are seen as a good team. They won the Super Bowl last year, and being able to go up against a fellow opponent that is good, that has quality, and being able to hold your own and beat them adds quality to you. And it's an indicator of sustainability going forward. And that quality of win and that qualitative value, a lot of things go into it. It plays into perception, it plays into projections, and it plays into sustainability, which we're going to get into. But it also plays into emotion. And that's something that I don't want to discount, but I think can cloud people's judgment at times, because the quality value of a victory can get mixed with emotion. Sometimes it's just a basic level feeling, or it's just a base level emotion. Like, I hate team A. I want team A to lose to the Bills. The Bills need to beat team A just because I hate team A. You see a lot of that in college football. Rivalries are huge. Rivalry week is massive. That's how you can have, Auburn can have a year where maybe they don't even go to a bowl game, but if they beat Alabama, that's a good year. Same thing for Michigan and Ohio State in their rivalry. You get those type of quality wins here and there because each game is different based on the quality of opponent, and sometimes it's tied to emotion. Sometimes it's emotion along with a bit of practicality. The best example I have for this is the Miami Dolphins-Bills rivalry in the 90s, especially in the early and mid-90s and the Super Bowl years. You had a team that you hated. Marino, hated him because he was a rival of Kelly. Don Shula, hated him, hated the city of Miami and its sun and its beaches, versus the Buffalo. It was cold and it was snowy. Again, Kelly and Marino, you had the emotion of all those years in the 70s and 80s of always losing to Miami and always getting beaten by Miami. But then you also had the practicality aspect of Miami was a good team. They were a threat to the Bills in the AFC East, and they were a threat to the Bills in the AFC as a whole. So beating them was a quality win because, one, it felt good. It made you feel better emotionally because you beat a team that you probably hated. But it was also good from a practicality standpoint because you beat a good football team and also increased your chances of winning a division and potentially getting home field advantage and having a better matchup in the playoffs. Quality of a win, again, is influenced by perception. It's influenced by projections. And all of those, again, tie into sustainability. Going to that second Jets game. Again, the Bills win that game 18-10. Think about how much better you would feel in that game. Again, going back to it, not knowing now where the Bills end up beating the Pats and the Bills beat the Seahawks, but how much better would you have felt after that second Jets game if the Bills came away winning that game 48-10 instead of 18-10? Because with the Bills winning 18-10, the projections are and the perceptions are after that game, well, the Jets are terrible and the Bills should have beaten them by more. And if you can't dominate a bad team, what are you going to do if you get into the playoffs? What are you going to do if you have to face the Raiders again or face the Chiefs again? If you can't dominate a bad team, what do you do when you come up against the good teams? If you can barely scrape by and not execute against a bad team, what are you going to do against the good teams? What are you going to do when you face New England or the Steelers or the Seahawks or even the Niners if they get a little healthier? That was a lot of talk. We heard from a lot of fans and a lot of analysts and a lot of media markets and a lot of content creators. If you could barely get a win and barely eke out a win against a bad team like the Jets, no offense, what were you going to do against the better teams, against the teams that were really going to bring it, that you have to prove yourself against come playoff time and come potential championship time? All of that disappears if the Bills come out of that game and kill the Jets, because that game didn't have a lot of qualitative value. That game didn't really mean anything for sustainability if you barely beat them. Because if you're playing a bad team like the Jets, the expectation is you beat them. And you have to destroy them and dominate them because their quality isn't there. And therefore just beating them doesn't add any credibility. It's the same thing almost in comic books and with superheroes. If you get Batman and Batman just beats up some thug on the street, whatever, he's Batman, that guy's some thug, who cares? You expect Batman to win that fight 10 out of 10. It does not matter. But if Batman goes up against the Joker, okay, you want to see what Batman can do against the Joker. And then Batman's credibility goes up when he beats someone like the Joker, because the Joker is someone who's going to test you mentally, he's going to test you physically, and by being able to beat someone like that, it raises the credibility up of the superhero. You see that in books, movies, TV, all that kind of stuff. And it's the same thing in sports. Facing a quality opponent and beating a quality opponent raises your game. And in those games, just beating them, just beating a quality opponent. If you had just beaten the Kansas City Chiefs, that's fine. If you win by 1 point against the Chiefs are a really good football team. You got the win. That's most important. There's quality in that because you played a quality opponent. So the win has qualitative value. But the Jets, when you face a bad team like the Jets, just beating them isn't enough. You have to destroy them. You have to pound them into the dirt. And especially for a Bills fan base, let's be honest, there's still a ton of paranoia creeping into our brains. How many of you out there, after we barely beat the Jets, or just won 18-10, or just beat the Pats 24-21, how many thoughts did you hear or see on social media that were like, oh, here we go again? I don't know why I let myself get my hopes up. I don't know why I got excited for the season. The Bills are who I thought they were always going to be. We couldn't beat Tennessee. We couldn't beat the Chiefs. We just barely beat the Jets. Now we just barely beat the Pats. It is what it is. If we win the division, cool, but we're probably not going to do anything. That paranoia is so ingrained in Bills fans, and it probably will be for forever, even if the Bills win a Super Bowl. Speaking for myself, the Bills could win the next 7 Super Bowls in a row. I will never feel confident in a Bills victory ever in my life because I've had my heart ripped out and torn apart and stomped on so many times in my life. I've had so many moments of just pure, utter defeat and agony that I will never feel confident. The Bills could be up by 100 with a minute left in the game, and I'll be like, they still might find a way to lose this or let this slip through their fingers. I won't feel confident. And I know there's a lot of fans out there that feel that same way. And so when we see the Bills play any opponent, if that opponent is viewed as being bad, the Bills need to crush them. Because if they don't, we're going to feel that, oh man, maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. And if we play a good opponent and we get destroyed, or we don't come out and look good at all, like we did against Tennessee, a little better against Kansas City, but we still got beat, it's easy to let that doubt creep in and be like, okay, this is, the Bills are who we thought they were. We don't feel good about them. That paranoia is going to creep into you. And I know that was talked about a lot with the Jets and the Patriots. And I say all that, you see my notebook there. I say all that to say this. There's a difference between winning and sustainability, because of the quality that can be attached to wins. Wins with more qualitative value, i.e. more quality, allow for more hopeful projections of sustainability in terms of continuous winning and winning a championship. Because again, for the Bills, it's not good enough just to be here anymore. And that's what I want to get into with these last 3 wins for the Buffalo Bills. We came away from that Jets game thinking, Bills only won 18-10. They didn't look great. We came away from that Pats game thinking we did not look good defensively in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. Maybe we got lucky getting that strip of Cam Newton. And then the win against Seattle came. And since that win against Seattle, I think the thought process has changed a little bit, and people feel more confident because the quality of that win was high. We beat one of the NFC favorites. We beat a team that had the MVP favorite. Josh Allen looked great. The offense looked unstoppable. As someone said in the comments, we bullied Seattle. We did bully Seattle. They got run out of the gym. Granted, we were in a stadium, so that statement doesn't exactly apply, but you know what I mean. The last 3 wins, the Jets, the Pats, and the Seahawks, are wins that point towards sustainability for this Buffalo Bills team. Because each one of those wins came in a different form and a different fashion. As the season is going to progress, as we will continue to see, the Bills are going to play a variety of opponents. They're going to play a variety of teams that have different styles, different game plans. They're going to play in different elements. They're going to play with potential different people on the roster. Maybe there's injuries. Maybe there's another COVID scare. There's going to be a variety of situations and games that the Buffalo Bills are going to play in. And in order to get to an AFC championship or get to a Super Bowl, you have to beat good teams and you have to beat a variety of teams. And to do that, you need to be adaptable. You need to be able to vary your game plan. You need to show versatility. And doing that is a sustainable thing when it comes to maintaining stability and sustainability in terms of winning long term. The New England Patriots, for the longest time, they're still even doing it now, although they're not having a good year this year. How many times did you see from week to week the Patriots would vary their game plan? Their running back usage was the most readily available example for that. One week, it would be James White. The next week, it might be Rex Burkhead. Going back through all their other years, you would just get running backs who would come out of nowhere and just absolutely dominate because this running back fit this style that the Pats wanted to use for this one game to get the win. Fantasy football users would talk about it all the time. Running back A blows up for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns in week 8 and then never gets a carry for the entire rest of the year. The Pats would vary their game plan and vary their personnel from week to week to take advantage of the opponent's weakness that they were playing in that individual week. And that's what we've seen from the Buffalo Bills in the last 3 weeks. And I think when you initially look at the Jets game or initially look at the Pats game and you see, 18-10 or 24-21, and maybe even if you look at the stat line, there is the appearance of those wins lacking quality. But if you look at them holistically and in the grand scheme of the season and who the Bills are and can be, it points towards sustainability. The Jets game, I've said it multiple times, I don't care how bad the Jets are, holding a professional football team, holding an NFL team to 4 total yards in the second half is tremendously impressive. The defense stepped up that game. What did we see in the New England game? The Pats came out, they played a ton of dime, they played a ton of dollar defense, meaning 6 and 7 DBs on the field. So the Bills came out, and they ran the ball. They ran the ball 38 times in that game. They only passed 18 times, and they ran for 190 yards. They ran the ball up and down the field on the New England Patriots, pinpointed a weakness, which was the Pats scheme, and they took advantage of it, ran against those dime and dollar fronts, ran against their front 4, their front 7 in the box that were either undersized or just not good enough, and they ran through them. They didn't need to pass. You come through the next game, in that Seattle game, you're facing a team that is on a historic pace of being arguably the worst pass defense of all time in a single season NFL season. And the Bills came out and they threw it 38 times and they ran it 19 times. And 19 of those runs came on the final drive of the game for the Bills when they were just straight chewing up the clock and kneeling and running Zach Moss just to run out the clock and get out of there with the win. So the Bills almost passed 3-1 in terms of their pass to run ratio against the Seahawks. Meanwhile, the previous week, all they did was run the ball. And the previous week, they looked better against the Jets than we thought with their aerial attack. They just didn't capitalize in the red zone. They had some turnovers that were very much less than ideal and very much ill-timed. But the Bills have shown a capacity to tailor their game to the needs of the individual team that they are playing against. And that, to me, just speaks to sustainability. If you can go from week to week and know that, okay, this is the opponent we're playing this week, here's what they're bad at, here's how we can change what we're doing to attack the hell out of what they're bad at, that's fantastic. And the Bills are going to need to do that as the season progresses, because once you get into the playoffs and once you play good teams like the Chiefs and the Titans, unfortunately, I hate the Titans, and the Ravens are still out there. I know they haven't looked good or looked like what they were last year, but they're still a good team. When you play those good teams and when you play in the playoffs, matchups are so key. There's so much tape available by the time you get to the playoffs. You've got 16 weeks of game footage that your opponent has on you, that they can scheme against, that they can tear apart and figure out, okay, here's what their audible sounds like for this. Here's what their call is for this. Here's what they like to do if they anticipate a zero blitz. So many opportunities to play mental games with your opponent. There's so much tape that these coaches have and so many ways to pick you apart. You need to be readily available to come into a game with a game plan that might shake things up. And if it doesn't work in the first quarter, you might have to change a little bit. And if it doesn't work in the first half, you got to change at halftime. You have to adjust. Sometimes those adjustments are game to game or week to week. Sometimes they're from play to play or drive to drive or quarter to quarter. But regardless of the time frame and the sample size you're going with, what the Bills have shown, both offensively and defensively the last several weeks, is their ability to adapt and change their game plan and make their primary focus attacking an enemy's weakness and attacking what a team is vulnerable against. And that is so crucial to sustainability. Winning 3 weeks in a row in different forms and different fashions, again, that cannot be overstated. To be adaptable and be able to win in a variety of ways allows you to match up with a variety of situations and a variety of teams. Even take weather into a factor if we get into the playoffs. What happens if you're going through? We'll appreciate it from Cover One account. Make sure to like this video and leave a comment for Anthony. Yeah, that would be tremendous. Likes are great for my ego. Comments are fantastic because they're also great for my ego. Let me know what I'm doing wrong, which is nothing. Let me know what I'm doing right. Also, if you're continuing to watch this live, feel free to throw more comments in. I love engaging with the comments and pointing things out and having conversations with everyone. So that's a great comment there. And as we go through the playoffs with the Bills, to get back to that previous point, there's so many opportunities for a game plan to change. Maybe, I don't know, again, we're throwing out there with the Bills and how good they are as a passing team, which goes back to Lone Wolf's statement earlier in this episode, do the Bills have an identity yet? The Bills' identity is they are an offensive football team, and in particular, they are a passing offense in terms of what kind of offensive football team they are. They are Josh Allen's team. He is the leader of this team in terms of like the stereotypical or kind of like metaphorical. He's our leader. He's our heart and soul. That's Josh Allen. But also he's the leader of this team in terms of output and production this year. With what he did against Seattle, he put himself back into MVP consideration. But for as great as Josh Allen has been, and for as great as Stephon Diggs has been, which is leading the entire NFL in receptions and yards, despite the fact that he has a game in hand on some other receivers, but he's still killing it. Cole Beasley has looked good. John Brown has looked good. The passing offense is good. The Bills are a passing offense. But what happens? Maybe the Bills have to play in Kansas City or play in Pittsburgh or play in Tennessee in the playoffs. Maybe the weather's terrible, or maybe they're even playing in Buffalo. Maybe there's a snowstorm, which could happen. Maybe there's extremely high winds. Maybe it's raining like crazy. Maybe there's sleet. Maybe there are some kind of condition that exists where the Bills, they can't pass as much as they want. Maybe they want to come out and they know, oh my God, we could shred this team through the air if we could come out and throw it 40 times. But maybe the weather isn't going to allow that. So you go into that game, can they win with the defense? Can they win with the run? And you need to have games where you can point to, oh, hey, you know what? They've won games with the run before. They've won games with the defense. We've seen that. Again, it's all coming through that concept of winning versus sustainability. If you're looking at a week-to-week win for the Bills, got to tie them together. The quality of opponent is going to take a lot of things into consideration for when you're looking at the value of a win. And I understand it's easy to get lost in, well, this team's bad, so we should kill them. And if we don't, it's kind of disheartening because it's like, well, I've seen other teams kill this team. And it's all tying into sustainability because we want the Bills to continue to go further. We want the Bills to win a playoff game, win a Super Bowl. That is the large goal. And the more the Bills win against good teams, and the more the Bills put in good performances, that sustainability factor will be there. And we'll start to see that. And that's the bigger goal. I know I just want one Super Bowl before I die. That's what I would like. And I would like that sooner rather than later. But the real goal and the larger picture goal for the Bills and for any team in any sport, except for maybe like the Marlins in baseball, the goal is to win, but also continue to win, to have year after year potential opportunities to prosper, year after year continual high chances to win every game, year after year high chances to win your division or win a playoff game or be a championship contender. And that's not always realistic. Again, if you're taking the odds of one team winning a championship every year versus the entire field, I'm going to take the field, even just going into this year. I know how good the Chiefs are, but if I had to bet, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? The Chiefs or one of the other 31 teams in the NFL? I'm going to take one of the 31 other teams in the NFL just because the probability is much higher. But the goal is to year after year be in that conversation. You want to continue to build. You want to continue to do things that allow you to be in every single game that you have. And I know the fan base got down a little bit, again, after that Jets game, after the Pats. They were definitely down after the Titans game, definitely down after the Chiefs game. But if you put everything into consideration, the Bills have shown that what they're doing this year is sustainable. because of their adjustments, because of their ability to stay fluid and be able to adapt on a week-to-week, quarter-to-quarter basis and tailor their offensive and defensive game plans in order to continue to win. And John, I see your comment here. Hey, live in Miami. The Marlins did make the playoffs. They did make the playoffs. What I was more referring to is the Marlins' history of, hey, we had a good year where we won a World Series. Let's tear it down and trade everyone away and then be terrible again for like 10 to 15 years. And then have another year where, hey, we won a World Series or did good and then tear it down and ship everyone out again. That's more what I was referring to. But yeah, they did. They did make the playoffs this year. And they beat the Cubs. Shout out to them. That's what we're looking for with the Bills. Year after year, sustainability. And there's a difference in that versus just simply winning a game. And that's also kind of good to feel that as a fan base, that we're past the point of just being like, I'm happy that the Bills beat the Jets. Oh, I'm happy that they just beat the Pats. That's all I wanted. I don't care. It's good that we're at the point now where we're like, you know what? No, winning just isn't enough. It's now looking into those wins and adding context to each one of those wins, because numbers can lie. And as much as it is the most important thing, and it is the most important thing to just get the win, it is infinitely more important to just come away with the win every single week. But the context of a win can tell you how often that team can win going further down the road. If I tell you I'm undefeated in one-on-one basketball games and I'm 1,000-0, and you're like, oh, that's impressive. But then if I tell you I only play fifth graders, then it's not really impressive, because numbers can lie. Context can tell a story. And looking at that, oh, well, is Anthony going to be able to sustain those wins in one-on-one basketball? Yeah, I guess if he continues to play fifth graders, but probably not. I want to go to some comments because I saw a lot of things come through. Michael here, I was leery of sustainability when Allen stopped passing in Game 5. Later, I learned that his shoulder harness, I'm guessing you're saying changed his ability to throw properly. That's a good point. We saw this spoken about on multiple times across several broadcasting platforms. Matt Hasselbeck talked about it on ESPN. That harness was limiting several things for Allen. And I don't want to make an excuse or just completely buy into it and just be like, well, that's why he had a down game against Tennessee. That's why he had a down game against the Chiefs. It was because of the shoulder. But it did limit his mobility and his ability to throw properly. It did limit his ability. And I think we've seen over these last several weeks as he's continued to get healthier, much like Tremaine Edmonds, as he's gotten healthier, Allen's game week to week has gotten more sustainable. This week is going to be very interesting to see with the Cardinals for Josh Allen, because the Cardinals defense is very leaky. They give up a lot of yards and a lot of points, but they still have talent there. But they're banged up. Buda Baker might not play. Even the game last week against Miami, three of their top four corners were all out. They were playing with their fifth and sixth string corners against Miami. They're banged up at the linebacking core, banged up on the defensive line, but they've still got some talent there. But they do play a lot of man coverage, which the Bills can exploit, and they have all year. So this game is going to be another interesting one for the Bills offense, but it should be one where Josh Allen, again, should be able to sustain his passing numbers and continue to go forward, to your point. T. Dobbs, going full-on run for the Patriots game nearly cost them, but it sure messed with Seattle's game plan. I don't know if it nearly cost them against the Pats, because the run was successful. The offense was successful. The defense just started to get real leaky towards the end, and they couldn't stop the QB powers. They couldn't stop Damian Harris. But to your point, it might have messed with Seattle's game plan. I mean, I still don't know how Pete Carroll came into the Bills game thinking that they were going to run the ball more than they did. I know that he said that they were surprised how much the Bills passed it against them. But, oof. Dustin Lines, identity is overrated. The Bills can beat you at your weakness, or at least that's what they are honing in on being able to do. I don't think identity is necessarily overrated, but I completely agree with the entire second half of your point here. The Bills being able to beat you at your weakness, hone in on that weakness, hone in on it, target it, focus it, and beat you at that is fantastic. And that's what you need to do going forward. How many times have we seen successful teams, i.e., I'm going to keep going to that, the Patriots, pinpoint what you are worst at and then create a game plan, what you are worse at, grammar check, and then pinpoint that, stay on it, and keep staying on it and keep staying on it. It's almost like if you go into a match and some guy's got a bad knee and you just work the knee and work the knee and work the knee. You smell blood in the water, you see it, you keep going after it and take advantage of it. And if the Bills can continue to do that as we go through the rest of the year, it bodes well. And that sustainability piece is there is because we've seen them do that multiple times throughout the year. So you can project going forward that they will continue to be able to do that against a variety of teams that they play against. And, shout out to the Buff Hub saying, I know this attractive man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you calling me attractive. That's so nice. Thank you so much. Dustin, again, if Allen was in fact hurt and not 100%, I feel better about how they played and game plan. That's fair. You got to take that into account. I do think Allen was hurt. When he went down against the Raiders, I held my breath for a decent amount of time. I thought it looked worse than I guess it ended up being. But anytime you get caught, we've seen it happen to Aaron Rodgers. We've seen it happen to a variety of quarterbacks. Anytime you get hit in the, not even in the middle, towards like the back end of your throwing motion, you're completely vulnerable when you follow through. And he got hit and lifted up and driven down. My first thought was kind of like what happened to Sam Darnold and other things that I've seen like with Aaron Rodgers. I was like AC joint injury or a shoulder separation. And you can tell that he was laboring a little bit, but he came through, he's gotten healthier, and he's looked better. I think what's also helped is that the teams Allen has played, again, have started to be not as good. I think it's a little bit easier to take advantage of the Patriots secondary with the COVID opt-outs and injuries that they've had, combined with the struggles of the offense. And the Seahawks defense, as we have talked about in this episode and as everyone and their mother has talked about, is historically bad against the pass. So maybe it's a bit of coincidence that he's gotten better these last several weeks. It could be because he's healthier, or it could also be a product of that, plus the fact that the defenses he's played have not been good. Justin Hutton, going back on that paranoia comment that I made earlier, years of mediocrity have us always bracing for the turn. Example, after the bye week when Fitzmagic fell apart, this team feels different. You know what's funny about that is an example that I had when it came to sustainability was the 2011 Buffalo Bills. They went to 4-1 that year after beating the Michael Vick Eagles in Buffalo. Andy Reid was head coach. Michael Vick had 4 interceptions that game, and 3 of them were just the flukiest, most random type of interceptions. He went to throw a screen pass. Alex Carrington batted into the air. Then it got intercepted. Throws another interception where it gets batted, hits off a lineman's helmet, falls into someone else's hands. The one in the end by Nick Barnett, I think it's Deshaun Jackson, catches it. Reggie Corner somehow rips it out, and then it hits off Deshaun Jackson's foot and gets kicked up into the air, and Nick Barnett picks it off. It was just a crazy amount of fluky interceptions, much like the amount of fluky turnovers the Bills had against the Pats when they won that game in Buffalo against the Pats. And I remember talking to my brother after that game, and he was like, oh, man, the Bills are 4-1. We just picked off Vic 4 times. The Bills look great. And I remember not feeling good about it because I didn't think the way that the Bills were playing defense and playing football as a whole was sustainable. That game, Fitz had like 193 passing yards. They didn't really take advantage of all the turnovers. They had another defensive touchdown. It was the 3rd game in the row in which they'd scored a defensive touchdown. They were getting takeaways at an astronomically high, unsustainable rate. And eventually you have to come back down to earth in some example and in some rate. And the Bills did. They finished that year 6-10. And it's funny that you mentioned that year because that was one of the premier examples that came into my brain of sustainability. There's a difference between winning, and that year shows it. There's a difference between winning and sustainability. That year, the Bills were winning. They were 4-1. But what they were doing was not sustainable. What they're doing this year is sustainable. Question for Dustin. Oh, we are a legit team. The question is how legit? Playoff win legit, deep playoff run legit. I think the Bills are Final Four in the AFC legit. Predicting past that, I got to see who they match up against and who they play. As of right now, I don't fear anybody in the AFC other than the Chiefs. That doesn't mean I think the Bills can easily handle the Titans or the Ravens or the Steelers, but I think everybody in the AFC, actually including the Chiefs, everybody is beatable. The Chiefs are the scariest because they have Mahomes, because of the offensive weaponry they have, and also because of all the teams that are favored in the AFC. The Chiefs have the best balance of offense and defense. Their defense with Chris Jones and Tyrann Mathieu two elite players who make plays and make that team better, combined with what they do on offense, you almost have to be perfect on offense to match what the Chiefs are going to do. But their defense is good enough to mess you up a bit. So the Chiefs scare me the most, but I think the Bills are legit. After that Seahawks win, and after the Bills have shown their sustainability over the last 3 weeks and throughout the whole season, and their ability to be able to hone on a weakness, target your weakness, exploit it, take advantage, and get wins in a variety of fashions while still maintaining their own game plan and working in things to mentally tax you in addition to physically executing, I don't see how you can see the Bills as not being legit. I think right now they're a Final Four team in the AFC. Granted, I thought they should have been a Final Four team last year, and they should have been if not for that ridiculous Texans game. But I think they're a Final Four team, and depending on how the matchups break down, I think they could be an AFC championship contender. And if that's the point, I don't care what happens from then on. Get the win any way you can. Just get me into the dance, and I'll take it from there. I don't care. Question from the Buff Hub. Does Zach Moss eventually make Singletary expendable? This is a tough question for me because I think most running backs are expendable. I don't believe in giving running backs big contracts as much as I love Alvin Kamara, and my fantasy team loves Alvin Kamara. I don't believe in giving running backs big contracts after their rookie deal, no matter really who they are. I think you can plug and play a lot of round 2 through 4 running backs and sustain your offense and sustain success. I think Singletary offers a bit of a different game than Zach Moss. And I don't think Moss's play makes Singletary expendable right now. I will say Moss has looked good, but I think what we've seen from Moss so far, I don't think I'm ready to crown him as a lead back, 3-down type of guy. Plus, I really like Singletary's shiftiness. His route running has expanded this year. He's gotten so much better in that area. I don't think I'm ready to say that Moss has made Singletary expendable. Ooh. Question here from John. Is it a fair question to ask if the Bills are still 2 to 3 guys short in a bar fight? KC's speed is scary, but Pitt, Baltimore, Tennessee seem nastier. Hope I'm wrong. That's a very interesting point. I think with the addition of Diggs and the addition of Feliciano, I think they have more bar fight in them. And that's a really good way to put it. I think they've got enough toughness. I think they've got enough toughness to go toe-to-toe with anybody. I know Pittsburgh's nastier. I know Baltimore's nastier. But I think the Bills are nasty enough to hold their own with anybody. I don't think any team is coming to play the Bills, whether in Buffalo or the Bills are on the road. I don't think anybody's punking the Buffalo Bills. And the Bills are a soft football team by any stretch of it. I think just if you look at Josh Allen, the joke's all offseason where he's got some dog in him. Allen is tough. Diggs is tough and brash and outspoken with his toughness. Feliciano is mean and nasty. Cody Ford is mean and nasty. I think we've got enough. I won't say we're the toughest team in the NFL, but I don't think we will be out-toughed or punked in any game that the Bills play. That was a very good question. Ooh, how do we afford Stephon Diggs' new contract and still pay Josh? This is a really good question, Justin, and I feel like it's a long answer, which I don't think I have enough time for on this, but I appreciate the question. I'm less worried about Diggs' contract and what we're going to be able to do with Matt Milano, potentially Darrell Williams. He's had a very good year for the Bills this year at right tackle. He made PFF's midseason All-Pro team. That's really cool. He's really locked down that right side. Maybe he gets a big deal. We still got to see what happens with Tremaine Edmonds. The Bills are going to pick up his 5th-year option, but does he get a long-term deal after that? How do all those contracts coalesce? I know Diggs' deal is a bit hefty now, and if he continues to produce at the level he has, he's going to get paid. We're going to see what those receiver contracts look like, but I think if it's that important, they're going to afford Diggs and they're going to afford Josh, which easily can happen. But if those things start to happen, you're going to start to see more one-year deals or rental players or rookies plugging holes at other positions on the field, i.e. offensive line, maybe even linebacker. You got to see what the Darrell Williams contract and the Matt Milano contract is going to look like going forward before we can put a hard stamp on it. Also got to see what the salary cap looks like. I know the projections are around 175 for next year. Maybe it goes up. Maybe it's even lower. We got to see what 2022 looks like, 2023, all of that. But that's a fair question. Oh, another good thing from John. Last post, sorry to overpost. Never apologize for overposting. Everyone's posts are fantastic, and I love all of them, and I love the interaction. Can we give Gerald Williams a shout-out? Right tackle now with strength, not a joke. Yeah, I just mentioned it. He's having a really good year. He's added stability and sustainability. I just want to throw that in there. To the right side of the line and protecting Josh Allen, a really good get. Someone that I think a lot of people just made jokes when the Bills got him, like, oh, ex-Panther, took a flyer, whatever. But he's come in and he's, to your point, made right tackle a strength. And I think that's awesome. Going through more comments, more coming through. Another one from Justin. The Seahawks win came on the back of 4 turnovers, though. Is that sustainable? Yes. Ooh, and the Buff Hub also had another comment here. Do the defensive takeaways look to stay sustainable? You can't always plan for takeaways. I don't think expecting to get multiple takeaways, let alone 4, is sustainable every week. But I will say the manner in which those takeaways came can be sustainable. You look at the Tre'Davious White interception. That was 3rd and long. That was Tre'Davious White reading the eyes of Russell Wilson, falling back off of his coverage in the flats, reading the eyes of Russ, knowing where the first down marker is, and then making a play on the ball. That type of thing can happen every week. The Jerry Hughes strip of Russell Wilson. The Bills, Eric Turner from Cover 1 did a fantastic breakdown of that strip sack of Russell Wilson. The Bills rushed Russ in a specific manner to get at his launch point and his end point and his backdrop that forced him up into the pocket. And the way Oliver scraped over, it forced Russ towards Jerry Hughes. And Jerry Hughes made a legit play. He went for that ball. He got it. You can't guarantee that's going to happen every week, but the potential of it happening is decently sustainable. The A.J. Klein strip sack, I did a video breakdown of this on the old Twitter. Bills came out in that double A-gap pressure look. They faked out of it with Hughes and Addison in each one of those A-gaps respectively. Hughes really sold it. He was twitching his back leg. He was leaning. Both he and Mario Addison dropped out into coverage. Saron Neal did enough on the outside to make Russ think twice about throwing the out. He held the ball for a split second too long. A.J. Klein came free off the edge, nailed him, stripped it. That's a result of scheme and personnel assignment and doing things to confuse the offense. That is sustainable. And then the Jordan Poyer interception, ironically, looked almost exactly like Micah Hyde's interception against the Pats last year and Tom Brady in Buffalo. But that's Poyer making a play. That's him dropping off of his man because he's reading the eyes of Russ. He's seeing what's going on, and he's making a play. I'm not going to say that's all the way sustainable, but I think the way each one of those takeaways came, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to see takeaways come like that in future games. Ooh, love the comment from John here in the $5 donation in addition to the 10. Awesome, John. Love you. Jordan Poyer needs a lot more respect from national press. That guy is an absolute animal. Love the way he plays. 1,000%. I picked this comment because it literally tied into what I was saying about Jordan Poyer. Poyer doesn't get enough respect from the national media. And in honesty, I don't think the Bills still get enough respect. People are talking about on NFL Network and other publications like, oh, if the Bills beat the Cardinals, I'll feel more confident in who the Bills are. You're not going to be able to make some people happy. And Poyer, for as good as he's been, I think he's playing at an all-pro level this year for the Bills. It'd be fun if Budda Baker plays, although I'd rather have him not play for the Cardinals because he's a very good player. But having Budda Baker and Jordan Poyer in the same game, both safeties are playing at all-pro levels this year. Poyer does so much in helping the Bills' defense disguise coverages, and present different looks up front. He functions really well around the line of scrimmage. He can blitz, he can cover in the flats and in the hook curls. He can drop deep and play in a 2-high or even rotate into the free along with Michael Hyde. That's a great point. Jordan Poyer does need a lot more respect from the national press, and I wish he got it, but I also kind of don't. I like the whole Buffalo be a secret thing and being kept a secret, and I like that. I also don't want our guys to get too much recognition, and then when they come up for free agency, they want big contracts. Like, as terrible as it sounds, the Matt Milano injuries, if that helps him come back to Buffalo on a cheaper contract, I don't want to say I'm all for it, and I feel bad saying I'm all for it, but I'm kind of all for it. Another comment from Dustin. I'm just going to get to these last couple and then call it a night tonight, folks. Did we talk about A.J. Klein went from the worst player I've ever seen to an AFC defensive MVP in a week? This speaks to the adjustments the Bills defense made. And again, why that leads to sustainability in the theme of this episode. AJ Klein, the last couple of years for New Orleans, he's gotten progressively worse in coverage, which is understandable, but he's been successful when coming downhill in the run game and in the passing game, blitzing off the edge. And what we saw in that game last week for the Bills was AJ Klein do a lot of blitzing. He was on the field for a lot of snaps, but he pass rushed a lot. He was coming downhill. He was coming downhill, going at the running backs, going at the guards, going after Russ. They used him in an aggressive fashion instead of not putting him in as many coverage situations like they had the weeks prior. So it's cool to see what he did last week. I still think he is going to struggle a bit in coverage, but if the Bills can use him more to his strengths, which is purely coming downhill as much as humanly possible, I think that bodes well to continue to see better performances from AJ Klein. Ooh, good comment from Jason. Poyer, better than Jamal Adams. You know, it's funny, looking at their numbers and looking at their play, that's not a ridiculous statement to make. And it's funny considering how many people talk about Adams as the best safety in the NFL and how much money he wants, but Poyer is up on his level and nobody really knows it. Nobody really talks about it. Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. T. Dobbs, that was a good old 1970s, 1980 sack. I'm surprised Klein didn't get a rushing the passer penalty. Yeah, I am too. I really thought as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, he hit him with his helmet. That's going to be a penalty. And especially knowing that it's Russ and he's one of the faces of the league and an MVP favorite, I was immediately like, I don't feel confident in that. I expected the flag. No flag came, but it was beautiful. He came screaming off the edge and just lit him up, took the ball. It was fantastic. One more. T. Dobbs. I heard that Klein sack on a refresh loop, and I watched it 6 times in a row. You should watch it 6 times in a row. Everybody should watch it even more. It was fantastic. Whew. That was a lot of good questions. That was a lot of good banter. I appreciate everything from everyone. This is going to bring us to the conclusion of this episode. Hence the toodles, you guys. Toodles is my fun, super imaginative, creative way of saying goodbye. I want to thank everybody for tuning into this episode. As I always do, I want to thank everyone who's listening later on whatever podcasting platform or anything that they're listening or watching or viewing this on. Thank you for the listen, the download, the support, any of those types of things. I want to thank anyone and everyone who engaged with me in the comments here on the live stream. John, T. Dobbs, Ron Beck, Dustin. I apologize for anybody if I missed your names for throwing out good comments. Lone Wolf. I apologize to anyone who I missed, but the engagement is super awesome, and I love having that. It's what makes the live streams even better than just doing audio-only episodes. Thank you, John. I appreciate you, Anthony. Nice job. Thank you, John. I appreciate your contributions in the many forms that you contributed. Thank you so much. I am Anthony, host of Disguised Coverage. If you're on the Twitter, give me a follow on the Twitter. Again, my handle is pro__ant, pro 2_ ANT. Find Disguised Coverage on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, the Facebook, any and every podcast streaming platform that you find podcasts, you can find Disguised Coverage. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage. Give me a follow on the old Twitter. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones stay safe and are doing anything and everything you can to continue to prosper in this horrible year that has been 2020. Wear a mask, stay safe, go Bills. I will see you next week.